So let's take a look at social action theories here. Now, social action theories are very different to what we've done so far. The social action theories are micro, they're action-based, as their name suggests. They're modern, which is the same as all the other theories so far, but they are not conflict or consensus. And again, it's a very different approach. These are looking at small-scale interactions between groups. So social action theories argue that society is a social construct. It's created by individuals and it's not something separate or above individuals. Essentially, we create society, we have free will, and we can choose how to behave. And essentially, it's quite an important theory because it challenges everything else we've done in terms of structural approaches. They argue that people's behaviour is driven by their beliefs, their ideas, their values, and obviously we can all interpret the same situation differently. So again, each meaning is quite unique. And social action thinkers argue that we should be able to look at issues on an individual level, take a micro approach. They're not looking at the big trends or patterns. They want to focus on smaller values and ideas. So this is where we see interpretivist, qualitative style research being introduced. Now, there are lots of different variations of social action theory. So symbolic interactionism is one of these, which basically says that we shape society individually. We all have our own meanings and values and ideas, and that's what helps us to shape and understand the world around us. So the work of Bloomer suggests that interaction has three key features. First, people act as a means of symbols, or in terms of symbols. So we attach meanings to words, to objects, to expressions, to gestures. These meanings develop out of our interactions, so they can change during an interaction, or an interaction can create a meaning to a symbol that may not be the same as other people, particularly think about that Mr. Bean GIF. And then the meanings arise from people trying to understand how they're seen by others. So humans are constantly internalizing how other people see us, and this is how it shapes our self-identity. Now, this obviously developed and is very similar to labelling theory, which we've done in other topics such as education and crime. So the key three elements of labelling theory, which comes into here, is the definition of the situation. So this means that a label is attached, a definition is applied to someone or something, and that's the first bit about the meaning. We have the looking glass self, which comes from Cooley, who talks about how we self-conceptualize ourselves based on how other people view us or how we think other people see us. So our self is mirrored in the way people see us. And this is what we generally talk about as the self-fulfilling prophecy. And then we have the career. So Jock Young, who studied hippies and marijuana use in the 70s, found that once a label had been attached to a group, a deviant career would develop. And the label is internalized, and this impacts on how they act in the future. Dramaturgical analysis is very similar to some of these ideas. It's part of symbolic interactionism, and it comes from Goffman, who looks at how life is like a performance, how we perform a role during our sort of interactions with other people. And he talks about ideas like costumes, props, scripts, roles. So this is why it's a dramaturgical analogy. So the front stage self would be the individual adopting the role they have been given, and they try to make it a convincing performance. So this might be a teacher going into a classroom, wearing their shirt and tie with their laptop and their pens, their board markers, their cup of coffee, all the props which signal and show they are a teacher. And they will perform their role to the class, who would be the audience. Now, the backstage is where the teacher or someone goes to reflect on their performance. They think about the performance they've done, and this is where they will be their true self. They are stepping out of the role. So they'll take away their costume, they'll put down their props. They're not performing the role. They're being themselves. And obviously at this point they will reflect. So a teacher will be more honest with other members of staff. They will maybe use language they wouldn't use in the classroom. And they'll be honest about their lessons. They may not have felt a lesson went very well, and they'll say that to other teachers, but they wouldn't tell the front stage class that the lesson was bad. Ethnomethodology and phenomenology are next two areas, and they kind of do overlap. So I'm going to go through ethnomethodology and then phenomenology. Now, ethnomethodology is a form of trying to understand the world, and the idea is that social order is an illusion. Now, I use this analogy in my lessons. It's something I made up, which is the balloon analogy. So I always think about it as social order as a group, a bunch of balloons or a bunch of balloons we're carrying around. And we're not aware of them. We believe they're there. They don't really have much impact. There's not much force behind them. And they're very fragile, like social order. And then once a balloon pops, that's when we realise how fragile social order or the balloons are, and we quickly act to restore it. If all the balloons were to pop, that would lead to social chaos. So one of the things we talk about, obviously the London riots is a good example of this, that was a breakdown of social order. That's when we realised how fragile social order was, and we quickly acted to restore it before social chaos took over. So Garfinkel was testing this idea of order being an illusion. So he would use disruptive experiments. He would go out into the real world and he would try to disrupt social order by swearing in public, breaking in or jumping into queues, going the wrong way up escalators. And it's about trying to show that the order we perceive is very fragile and easily broken. Now, phenomenology is very similar to this. This is kind of where ethnomethodology developed from. Phenomenology is the idea that social order is an illusion. Ethnomethodology is the kind of experiment to test this. And the main focus for phenomenology is to answer the question is, what is reality? Obviously, is it a social construct? Is it something that we all share? Is it real? So it's quite philosophical. And phenomenology therefore considers that social norms are developed and carried out by society. We create the norms around us. We create the behaviour. So again, it's very micro in that approach. And it's considered to be a social action theory because of the focus on individual meaning. So the easiest way I can think about this is obviously we all have different interpretations of what it means to be Christmas, and this is different cultures and different countries have different Christmas celebrations. And if we went to a different situation, a different country, we might find the celebrations of Christmas there strange or odd because they go against our understanding, our norms. So it's a slightly longer summary there, but hopefully this helps with social action theory and obviously the branches. The main thing to remember is that these are kind of the general themes of social action theory, but the examples you've got from education and from crime and from family life, these will be, and religion even, are good examples to use to demonstrate the ideas. Symbolic interactionism, labelling theory, dramaturgical analogies, that's the kind of symbolic interactionism branch. It's about the interactions between groups and people. Ethnomethodology, phenomenology, that's the interpretivist branch. So it's about the research and the thinking about how society works and exists. And there we have it. So thanks for watching, and I hope this has been of help.